We are rolling 2/3 of the way. We're almost there. All right. Well, thank you. At this time, I'm honored to welcome our next moderator, Ms. Sally Speener. Ms. Speener is the Secretary for the U.S. section of the International Boundary and Water Commission. Please welcome Ms. Sally Speener.
Good morning. I'd like to have our panelists come up, and I'll introduce them in just a minute. I had a few slides, and while they're getting settled, I think I'll just go ahead and start on those in the interest of time. I wanted to give a little bit of context about the U.S.-Mexico work that's been underway, and then we'll be talking to our panelists about some of the work that has occurred. Minute 323 is our comprehensive U.S.-Mexico agreement on the Colorado River that was signed in 2017, and it modified or extended the provisions of our previous agreement, Minute 319, which was a 5-year pilot project. Some of the important aspects of the agreement are creation of Mexico's water reserve so that Mexico can store water in the United States for future delivery, and it's kind of like the domestic ICS mechanism, but for Mexico. It also provides for shortage reductions in Mexico that are complementary to those that are underway in the United States. It has water sharing during high reservoir conditions. And then we also have a concept called recoverable water savings under our binational water scarcity contingency plan. And that's essentially the Mexico piece of the lower basin drought contingency plan. We have a projects work group that is working on water conservation and new water sources projects, including potentially in the future desalination projects. And then we also have an environment work group that's been dealing with habitat restoration and environmental water deliveries. They've been very successful, and there are places in the lower Colorado River Delta region that were desert a decade or so before, and we now have thriving ecosystems, forests full of birds. So it's been really a remarkable transformation. Salinity is another important issue in this part of the river, and we are addressing the salinity impacts of reduced deliveries. We've started some real-time salinity monitoring. Mexico, being the end user on the river, of course, is impacted by salinity in a way that some of the upper basin users perhaps are not affected by so profoundly. And then flow variability is another issue that we've addressed. There's no storage in Mexico, so how can we better control the deliveries to Mexico, particularly addressing the variability in the daily deliveries that we make to Mexico under the 1944 Water Treaty. That minute also called for additional consultations in the event that we had worsening hydrology. And in light of some news that we received from Reclamation a couple of years ago, we convened the Binational Emergency Response Group in early 2023. And we undertook negotiations that were focused on actions that Mexico could take to complement the additional conservation that was underway in the United States. And we successfully concluded those negotiations, and we signed Minute 330 in March of this year. Under this agreement, Mexico is conserving 400,000 acre-feet in 2024 through 2026 as basically the Mexican piece to complement the 3 million acre-feet of conservation that is being undertaken in the lower basin in the United States. The agreement also provides for $65 million in United States investment for fallowing, conservation, and salinity projects in Mexico. And we also established some new work groups, including the Salinity Policy Work Group, because of concerns of additional salinity impacts as a result of this additional conservation, as well as a group that was important to Mexico that addresses a disparity in how reductions are applicable at the two different delivery points to Mexico. So I wanted to provide that information to set the stage for the questions that our panelists will be addressing today. Let me go ahead and introduce our panelists. Our first one here in the white blazer is Mexican Commissioner Adriana Resendez of the International Boundary and Water Commission, United States and Mexico. She was appointed to her position in 2021 after more than 20 years with the Commission, including her work as Principal Engineer of the Operations Department and Deputy Director for the Colorado River. And I know a lot of people in this room have worked for her for many years on the Colorado River issues in Mexico. Next to her is United States Commissioner Maria Elena Giner. She was appointed by President Biden in 2021 after completing her PhD in public policy from the University of Texas. She previously served as General Manager of the Border Environment Cooperation Commission, which was the sister agency of the North American Development Bank, where she developed water and environmental infrastructure projects along the U.S.-Mexico border. I might add that Commissioner Resendez is the first woman commissioner for Mexico. Commissioner Giner is the second woman commissioner for the United States. Therefore, this is the first time we've had two women heading the two sections of the agency. And I don't know, but I think we've had an extraordinarily productive 3 years. And we also have Reclamation Deputy Commissioner David Palumbo, who oversees several thousand operations group employees and manages critical water and power infrastructure over 17 western states. Among his many distinctions, he just received the 2024 Presidential Rank Award for Distinguished Service, a prestigious honor awarded to a very select group of career civil servants for scientific, technical, and professional achievement. Congratulations, Deputy Commissioner. So my first question is for you, Deputy Commissioner Palumbo. Leading up to minute 330, at what point did Reclamation realize you wanted to start a new dialogue with the International Boundary and Water Commission about the worsening forecast? And what were the messages you wanted to convey, and where did you think it would lead?
Thank you, Sally. Thanks for the question, and just honored to be up here with Commissioners Resendez and Commissioner Giner. Just as a general matter, the Bureau of Reclamation has been working with IBWC and SELA commissioners very closely in coordination really since 2012 in the minute 319 timeframe. And since that time, we've had continued and consistent coordination with Mexico, and it was really rooted in a couple of pillars. One, related to operational alignment. 2, transparency. 3, communication. 4, sharing best science. And so with that as a backdrop and the ongoing drought, and really right here at CRUA in 2021, coming off of really poor hydrology in 2020 with 60% of average inflow into Lake Powell. 2021, we received 36% of average inflow into Lake Powell, and we knew we needed to take action. At CRUA, we shared that we were perilously close to elevation 3490 at Glen Canyon Dam, and immediately we began working through the IBWC with the commissioners to develop actions to help protect the system. They immediately supported leaving 480,000 acre feet in Lake Powell that year. And then the subsequent year at CRUA, we announced that we would begin concerted and coordinated efforts with Mexico that would complement the effort we just began in November of 2022, kicking off the SCIS process. And so we turned to the year 2023. We worked extremely hard with the Binational Emergency Response Group, with the states, to come up with minute 330 that really landed at the same time as the final SCIS, which we published in March of 2024, the same time we signed minute 330 in March of 2024. So that recognition that the impacts from the drought were affecting the United States. We wanted to be operationally aligned with Mexico, with the commitment made by the states for the 3 million acre feet. We knew Mexico was willing to commit in proportionality the 400,000 acre feet. And so we worked that year very hard to get that minute across the finish line, and it really stuck it, if you will, when we landed both the signing and the final in the month of March of 2024. Thank you.
And involvement during your tenure at the Commission. How did you see the role and participation of the basin states in the Minute 330 negotiation?
So the individual who used the quote, "Change comes at the speed of trust," I'm going to use that moving forward, because it really does set the foundation for advancing any type of change. One of the things that I've learned in this business is all three of us up here, except for Sally, are engineers. And we as engineers became engineers because we like things to fit in a formula. But one of the things that I really highlight is that the big unknown or the big variable in anything, the engineering piece is always the easiest piece. It's the people piece that makes things challenging. And it's the people piece that ensures that things will change and advance. So with regards to how we folded in stakeholder engagement within this process, and I like to quote Sharon Magdal, I know she's in the audience, she's well known amongst many of you, is that there's nothing like breaking bread together as people that come together to negotiate that, and recognizing that we all have families, we all care about the region, and we all are in the same boat. And we can't work from a position of my loss is your gain or my gain is your loss, because we continue to be neighbors. Our geography is never going to change. The culture that transcends the border is never going to change. So in negotiating Minute 323, we came from the perspective of that we really needed to grow the pie. And we really needed to ensure that moving forward, that we were going to build resiliency not only on the U.S. side, but also in the Mexican side, and data and science, like David Palumbo mentioned, was really the element that was part of understanding what was really happening in the basin. And we've been really lucky that Bureau of Reclamation has really been able to develop that over decades. We don't have those same tools on the Rio Grande, and we've been able to use that experience onto the Rio Grande. And why do I mention the Rio Grande? Because I know Lyle Larson's in the room somewhere, and he's always going to say something at these meetings, is that we always want to ensure that these basins are maintained separately, that it is one treaty. And so there are stakeholders in other regions that are important to this, and for them to understand that we are learning and actually modeling what's going on the Colorado in our other basin, which is the Rio Grande. But during the negotiation process, negotiations can be very tedious. You're in a room, you're going interest by interest, or what is the interest, or what are the points that we want to discuss. You have to have a schedule, and you also have to have those touch points where you're informing the basin, the region, and the states were part of this. We had a representation of the upper basin and the lower basin, and they in turn briefed the other basin states as to what was happening, and that's how we advanced buy-in. The basins were involved, we had the users on both sides that were also involved. And I think that's why we were able to get it over the finish line. We did have delays. Our original schedule, and that's part of this exercise, is that persistence, that going point by point, agreeing to this, sharing our stories, that we have children, we have families that are being all impacted by this in the region, was how we really came out of this as friends. in addition to a couple of tequila shots, of course, right? But breaking bread is part of the process.
Thank you. Commissioner Resendez, during the negotiations of Minute 330, what were some of the important messages that Mexico wanted to convey to the United States in terms of impacts in Mexico or Mexican priorities?
Well, one of the main issues here, yeah. One of the main issues was how to communicate to the authorities in the United States the challenges we have in Mexico. We had to demonstrate to our users that Minute 323 will allow us to address the increasingly extreme Colorado River shortages. We had to demonstrate that those provisions were not sufficient to attend the drought on Colorado River. In 2024, we had reductions for 99 million of cubic meters. And in this year, in 2024, we needed to say to our users that they need to have an additional shortages from another 164 million of cubic meters. We signed a minute in May, so we need to say in the middle of a year that they need to have another reduction. This was a very important issue to communicate to the United States the challenges we have in Mexico to attend that particular point that was very hard for my country. Also, something important is that in the United States, they have already started with the conservation projects, and we don't have that provision. So that was the part most important. As you know, Mexican users have been used its all allocation from 75 years, but they need to have a new scheme to work for this new climate, this new challenge we have with shortages. For Mexico, it is important that U.S. authorities understand this situation and to find joint solutions that will allow us to move towards a solution and an agreement that will benefit both countries. During the negotiation, we emphasized this situation, and finally, we work together like always. We work together in a cooperation manner. As Maria Elena says, the science and the data is a key issue because we need to understand what is happening in another country. The basin is in the United States. Mexico needs to understand what is happening in the United States. What are the challenges in that country? And Mexico needs to understand that. But the United States needs to understand what is happening in Mexico. That's, I think, only we can do this only in a cooperation manner, in a trust, and the information and trust each other to have a very good agreement like Minute 330. And I think we need to work in the same way for post-2026.
Deputy Commissioner Palumbo, as everyone knows, Reclamation is working on the environmental impact statement for the post-2026 period. What has Reclamation done to keep Mexico informed about this domestic process?
Thanks, Sally. A couple things, really, just to set the stage for everyone's awareness. As you said, Sally, and as everyone knows, we're hard at work with the post-2026 process. Minute 323, the companion agreements and related activities also expire at the end of 2026. So we need to have a new minute in place contemporaneous with the completion of the post-2026 process. So that's just the foundation of where we're at, the landscape that's in front of us. Going back to what I said based on the first question, what we've done is really try to rely on those pillars of our relationship and I'll repeat them again: operational alignment, transparency, communication, relationships, and that sharing that best science. As a more formal practice, the IBWC, as in the 2007 guidelines, is a cooperating agency. So we have a formal conduit in which to communicate with IBWC and to CELA about what is going on in the post-2026 process. Additionally, we have federal to federal meetings to keep, through IBWC, to keep Mexico apprised of the status of the activities, whether it be activities on training opportunities for our web tool, activities related to the negotiations with the states, where we are with our alternatives development process, what proposals have come in, how they're performing. We've brought in the states to provide updates to both IBWC and CELA, both the U.S. and Mexico section. So that dialogue, that continuing dialogue, is vitally important. And as Commissioner Henare said, there's an informal process, that breaking the bread together. Every opportunity that we have, we keep each other apprised with phone calls and texts and dinners, just letting each other know what the feeling on the ground is, what's happening, what might be coming around the corner, and that's been really vital to keeping the process going and moving in a speed that will allow us to have a new minute at the same time as we have a record of decision for the post-26 process.
Commissioner Henare, much of your professional career has been spent developing water infrastructure projects along the U.S.-Mexico border. How do you see opportunities for additional projects shaping the post-2026 negotiation?
So I'm not sure how much people are familiar that U.S. Bureau of Reclamation is a federal agency that has invested in Mexico for water conservation efforts in order to build that resiliency so that these irrigation districts can operate with less water in order to maintain their livelihoods. But US EPA also has a similar program, and US EPA invests in Mexico. And again, these are all border region communities because this federal funding that's going into Mexico has to have a US side benefit. US EPA has also done the same thing. They've invested about $400 million in sanitation all along the border. The reason I highlight that is that the relationship between the U.S. federal government and the border states goes really deep, and it goes all the way back to the obviously the 1944 Water Treaty, the La Paz Agreement that was signed in the 80s. That looks at environmental issues because environment doesn't stop at the border. And so that vision of collaboration goes really deep in water and sanitation and water supply. And I think that as we move into the post-2026, and we've seen that there could be opportunity for more reuse that could create a more resilient water supply in the region, I think that's going to be an area where the opportunities of collaboration among our federal family is going to be really important. I'll give you an example. In the Tijuana region, they're looking at taking wastewater and using it for potable water use, right? And so right now Tijuana is 99% dependent on Colorado River. And that's really harmful to a city that in one earthquake, that aqueduct can be disastrous, right? And so looking at those areas of not just agriculture, but also urban water supply, I think is going to be really important. One of the issues that Mexico has is that their water portfolio is usually just one source, and diversifying those water portfolios is really important. Why? And I know Dr. De La Parra has brought this up on multiple occasions. Tijuana has grown because of manufacturing in that community. Almost every single Fortune 500 company has a facility across the border. And so as the United States government, that trade is really important to the region. And so I think that there's going to be this opportunity in post-2026 and looking at building resiliency in Mexico from an infrastructure perspective, not just in agriculture, but also looking at opportunities within municipality, because again, there is federal interest across sectors.
Commissioner Resendez, what can you do to help prepare Mexican users to address potential future shortage conditions on the Colorado River? And what actions can be taken to help mitigate the impacts to Mexico?
As you know, the implementation of Minute 330 will be very important for us. This minute had the proposed to address future conditions and to be prepared for that. This is why we are developing a very carefully and very orderly implementation scheme for Minute 330 with a very clear rules. We are in that process with our users and with CONAGUA, developing how we are going to implement the resources established in 330. This will provide certainty to users and how to deal with a scenario of lower availability. We must demonstrate the need to carry out technification works and to improve the infrastructure of the irrigation district to obtain greater efficiency in the water. In our opinion, this new approach will allow us Mexico users to explore how to face a future with higher demand and a potential lower availability. I think this is the most important for us. The goal is to maintain the same productivity on the areas. And as Commissioner Giner says, it is very important for us, the municipal users. I think the involvement of the state of Baja California in this process is a key issue because they depend on they depend a lot of water of Colorado River. As you know, in addition, my country, my Mexican government, is undertaking a national water plan that considers technification in many districts in all the country. And one of those is irrigation district in Mexicali Valley. They are doing some actions and they have a plan to implement additional work in the districts to attend principal municipal users. I just want to add the cuts of and the reductions have a serious and a direct impact on of the users in Mexico. So that's the reason that we have that we need to have a good scheme to attend that. Thank you.
Okay. I think our time is just about up, but maybe if we could just get some very brief answers to some quick questions. Commissioner Giner, what do you think the people in the audience would be most surprised to learn about the water issues we're working on with Mexico?
I think we have an opportunity coming forward. We have 2 new administrations coming up. President Sheinbaum, I am very pleased with what I've been hearing as far as her position with regards to water and science. She recognizes that over-allocation of water in Mexico is a real problem, and that they're looking at investing in irrigation districts under the condition of water rights being clawed back. And that is like a first of its kind. In her 100+ points that she talked about, water was in her priorities. So I'm really, really hopeful for that. And I'm not sure if the public's aware, but in Mexico, water is managed entirely by the federal government. And so it gives us a direct venue for negotiation. And the irrigation districts do have a certain level of influence over that. But I think that I'm really hopeful on what we can really achieve in Mexico. We'll create an irrigation district in Baja California and Sonora that will be a model for the rest of the country.
Commissioner Resendez, what would you say is the biggest success of Minute 323?
I just want to say something. Minute 323, Minute 319 had rules. The rules are very important for us, and it is important to say we have these rules and we need to do that. But one of the biggest is the conservation program that we had implemented in the district, and of course, the environmental issue. I saw environmental people here. I think this is one example to the world that how to both countries can attend the environmental. I think this is one of the most big challenges we have, and the establishments of working groups. I think the working groups are very good to attend in a technical manner some parts like projects like hydrology, like environmental. Thank you.
And David, just a few seconds left. What do you think the biggest challenge is going to be when we negotiate for the post-2026 with Mexico?
I think there's two groups of challenges. One is the water scarcity. With the ongoing drought, there's less water, the stakes are higher, the pressure mounts, and so that's just an underlying baseline challenge we have. Excuse me. And then two is getting to consensus. Working domestically, working internationally. We have really 39 sovereigns. We have the 30 tribes, we have the 7 states, we have the federal government, we have the Mexican government. So working in that confine is going to be really critical to ensure the resiliency, the sustainability, the health of the basin at large, which we all share.
Okay. Could we have a big round of applause for our panelists? Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Thank you again, Sally, and panel guests, for the robust dialogue. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to use my radio announcer voice. And now, for the main event. Okay, just kidding. I want to reintroduce the Bureau of Reclamation's 24th Commissioner, Camille Kalimlim Tootin, and share a short video presentation before her remarks.
The Colorado River is the lifeblood of the American Southwest. It provides water for 2 countries, 30 tribes, more than 40 million people, supports 5.5 million acres of agriculture, and is important for ecosystems and endangered species. I am proud of the actions that Reclamation has taken to secure the basin now and for the future. This effort is about people, partnerships, and investments. That includes over $5 billion that funds more than 200 projects and agreements across the Colorado River Basin. The Bureau of Reclamation remains a vital force, steadfast and unwavering. And together, we got it done. Let's hear from our Lower Basin team.
The Lower Basin of the Colorado River has taken many steps to conserve water in the near term. As of today, we have signed 25 agreements that have conserved 2.28 million acre-feet of the 3 million acre-feet committed to by the Lower Basin states.
These conservation agreements are historic in both scale and scope. Look at Lake Mead. It's up 20 feet from 2 years ago.
And we've taken the first steps in signing long-term conservation agreements, investing $107 million into 3 Gila River Indian Community projects that will conserve 73,000 acre-feet and are currently negotiating 7 more agreements in the basin.
Passing it to our colleagues in the Upper Basin.
We've invested $44.3 million in 174 drought projects that will help conserve water in the Upper Basin.
Our efforts, coupled with recent improved hydrology, have resulted in a 50-foot increase at Lake Powell since 2021. And we are working to protect the ecosystem in the Upper Basin by investing more than $23 million in programs for the protection of endangered fish.
Numerous long-term conservation agreements are also in the works, and project recipients will soon be announced.
Let's do a quick check-in on the short-term and long-term operations.
we brought all our partners together for the near-term Colorado operations, and in less than a year, developed the Supplemental Environmental Impact Study.
In the last 2 years, we've collaborated with tribes, states, and the public to develop operational strategies for the future and have identified 5 alternatives that will be analyzed over the next few months as we work to solidify the long-term operations after 2026.
And now back to Washington, D.C.
Our efforts will forge ahead with innovative restoration projects and strategic partnerships. With more than a century of experience in managing water in the West, Reclamation will continue to protect this vital resource. Together, we will secure the future of the Colorado River Basin.
My team. As I stand here in front of you today, I feel a profound sense of gratitude, of pride, and optimism. Serving in this role for the past 4 years has been transformative for me, professionally and personally. The Colorado River has a way of humbling you, of inspiring you, of demanding the very best of you. Really grateful to have shared this journey with all of you, with my colleagues, with my partners, and with my friends. We all know that the Colorado River is more than just water. It's a lifeline. It flows through our histories. It flows through our communities. It flows through our shared future. Together, we have accomplished so much to ensure that we protect it. We forged new partnerships, deployed innovative solutions, and made meaningful progress against the common enemy that is drought and aridification in American West. These successes belong to all of you, to my team at the Bureau of Reclamation, to the tribal leaders, the Basin States partners, the country of Mexico, to the community advocates, and to many more. Your collaboration, creativity, and courage have shown what is possible when we work together. Your dedication reminds me every day why this work is so meaningful. And as we celebrate milestones, we must also acknowledge the work still ahead. The decisions we make today will shape the river for decades to come. Reclamation's 5 alternatives for post-2026 underscore the complexity of managing this river into the future. And it also highlights the opportunities within reach. We must carry this important and profoundly rewarding work, engage fully in the post-26 process, find the solution that serves this basin, and commit to it together. And when the weight of these decisions feel heavy, as they inevitably will, we need to remind ourselves, and we need to remind each other, why we do this work. We do this work for the millions of people who rely on this resource, for the ecosystems of which we are stewards, for future generations who will inherit a world that we are shaping today. And so I leave you with this. Keep doing the hard work. Stay at the table. Listen to each other. Challenge one another. But push forward with courage together. The river demands nothing less than the best of us. Collaboration over division, courage over complacency, and a steadfast belief that the future is what we're working towards. The Colorado River demands the best of us. The millions of people who rely on this resource deserve nothing less than the best. Together, we can secure the future of this river. We can sustain the life for generations to come, to continue to build the connections, to be the example of hope for future generations. So I want to thank you. Thank you for your resolve. Thank you for your willingness to do the hard work. Now let's finish the work. Thank you.
As promised, look at your watches. Thank you, Commissioner, for that heartfelt speech, and thank you for supporting Federal Friday. It means the world to us. We appreciate the great dialogue and partnerships that we've had as we work towards one goal, and that's protecting the stability and sustainability of the Colorado water system. I want to thank President Shawcroft for hosting another successful CRUA conference, and give yourselves a round of applause for attending this year's Super Bowl of conferences for the Colorado River system. And we look forward to seeing you next year. Now, as promised, get out of here. Happy holidays. Enjoy the rest of the year.